Welcome back to Fight for Your Health workshop. Hormones. Whatever you know about hormones, you don't know enough. Bioidentical hormone therapy is sweeping the world. And again, when I talk about toxins, try to understand that if you sent your blood out, you fail the test because you have endocrine disruptors, as well as neurotoxins, as well as carcinogens. And so we do know that we have people that are finding that they've been able to do pretty well in working better if we understand that we can neutralize these pesticides, this mercury, the phthalates, when we use zeolites in nutrition, and that's a piece of the puzzle. But so many people today feel stupid, fat, and tired. Obesity rates have skyrocketed. It's so sad. We have a nation that is today feeling so unhealthy. Chronic fatigue syndrome is estimated to involve at least 500,000. The number is probably much higher. And no one's going to get anything but a prescription for some antidepressant. And those antidepressants, many of them worse, and then you look at the side effects of the drugs that we use for anxiety and depression and obsessive compulsive disorder, and the amazing level of new diagnostic categories that we have for mental illness, all of which have a convenient drug to treat them with, none of which are doing anything but treating symptoms. So the environmental toxins are clearly a huge part of this, but we have these people with fibromyalgia, sexual dysfunction, decreased libido, impaired memory, mood disorder. Across the board, these are related to how the hormones in our body are working. And we know that mercury is involved in the conversion of the free T4 inactive to the active form. So the enzyme is a 5-deiodinase enzyme. It's inactivated by mercury arsenic. So it's so sad that when you have a patient in front of you, that if you read any textbook on endocrinology, it's got everything proving that it's hypothyroidism, but the test doesn't confirm it, then unless you become a knowledgeable expert, which just Mark Starr's book, Type 2 Hypothyroidism, can help you. If you become knowledgeable, then you can sit there and say, I'm going to give you this in spite of your normal tests because you understand what's going on. Now you get into the iodine deficiency story. It's essential. Why do we need it? I have done a whole webinar on this, which is on my gordonresearch.com website, so we won't spend further time on it. Where do we get iodine? This is so little iodine compared to what we now think we need. We're afraid because you've got so much tying up your iodine. Just bromine alone is 10 times more in bread than it used to be. Bromine, which is in a dumb drink called Mountain Dew, which has been known to make people schizophrenic. The bromine is not good for us, but it is an antagonist to iodine, as is fluorine. So when you get to the story, why are we deficient? Deficient soils, goitrogenic foods, soy products, again, environmental toxins, act as endocrine disruptors and competing with iodine at cell receptors. So what's a good dose? I'm suggesting 50 milligrams a day, and that will increase your excretion of lead and mercury, amazingly. And then the lead from the liver binds the iodine, it forms lead iodine, which prevents it being reabsorbed. So there's a lot of reason to take iodine. That doesn't mean everybody can take iodine. If you go on Google and you put in iodine toxicity, there'll be horrible stories of people who feel they can't take a microgram. So obviously when we're getting into medicine with a sick, poisoned population, you need to protect yourself and know the ins and outs. Just like you just can't start everybody on thyroid therapy. We give them baby doses and we cover, so we have to work with the body because we're still at the art of medicine and practice of medicine. One of the symptoms of iodine deficiency, goiter, pregnancy-related problems. Iodine is so important in pregnant and in nursing. So please get up to speed on this because you're going to cut down mental retardation and you're going to be paying for that problem with impaired speech, impaired hearing for the whole child's life, and all we needed to do was address these issues. Again, hypothyroidism, everybody knows, fatigue, low basal temperature, dry coarse, skin, hair loss. These are symptoms that almost everybody tests positive on one or more of these symptoms. Possible clinical indications for therapeutic iodine, we use it for cancer. Now we can put it topically right over the breast, and you can paint the breast with potassium iodide. It turns bright red. About 2 hours later, all the red is gone. It absorbs it right into the skin. That's not the only answer that we use, because some women really needed progesterone. And across the board, many of them need vitamin D. So we're going to have to practice good medicine, but it's important to realize that it's so difficult because we always try to find out what's the ideal test to tell you who needs more magnesium. So I spent $1.5 million of my friends' money. Bob Atkins and other people gave me money, and I tried to develop the ideal test for magnesium. And I mentioned earlier, it's now available commercially as Exatest, E-X-A-T-E-S-T. What we did is we found that nothing counts unless you know how much is inside the cell, because I point out cells don't have a mouth, so you need to have that pump working so that no matter how much magnesium I swallow, how much is inside of my heart muscle cell. So we scrape the bottom of the tongue like a pap smear of the tongue, put it on a slide, put it in an electron microscope, and then bombard it with X-ray fluorescence, and we can tell you how much magnesium is inside. I can give you a written guarantee. You cannot be acutely ill and not have magnesium deficiency. You can't be chronically ill and not have magnesium deficiency. And no matter what your doctor tells you, I don't care how much magnesium you're taking, the chance that you have enough inside of a sick cell is pretty small. So, that's why I did a lot of IV. And I did a lot of IM because a lot of people couldn't afford the IV. So we do intramuscular. I do a lot of things to try to keep the patients affordable, but these are important things to know. Therapeutic iodine use is for cystic breasts, but it's also helpful in infertility, endocrine imbalances. There's so many pieces of this puzzle. So iodine induces apoptosis. That means suicide. That means the cancer cell, we want the cancer cell to give up. We don't want it to be immortal, because that means there'll be more of its buddies. We want it to give up and pass on into apoptosis. In preventing and treating disease, highest rate of, this is really amazing, the difference between Eastern and Western Finland was totally huge difference, was all the iodine intake in the West. And the net result was one side had 353% higher incidence of goiter, but tremendous difference in heart disease tied to the intake of iodine. And you don't get told that. Everybody's in this country is told it's statin deficiency. So Dr. Zava has talked a lot about it, and iodine is essential for early brain development. So tolerable upper, how much can you really give of iodine? Well, they've gone up to pretty high levels, but they use it for what happens if you get too much. You get symptoms of a head cold, you can have gastrointestinal, you can get acne, metallic taste. So there's symptoms that you need to be aware of. Dr. Brownstein has written a really good book on this. He's doing a lot in trying to train people about the need. And then there's a 7-step plan to boost your low thyroid and support your metabolism. Mark Hyman again, Institute for Functional Medicine. The most important factor for hypothyroidism is how many toxins, like pesticides, which are hormone disruptors. Heavy metals, mercury, affect thyroid function. So you've got it clear now. Treat the underlying cause. That's a good step in managing any hormone thing. Optimize your nutrition, minimize stress. Exercise. Nothing's going to work without the exercise. Get supplements. No one on this planet is going to have optimal health without certain supplements that we have to have. Heat. Saunas. I love far infrared saunas. Heat is a great way. Sweating is the greatest way to get rid of bad things. And then give thyroid, so that the body is able to function, because you've got, just like PEMF restore, when you do a pulsed electromagnetic field, you're getting pulsed energy, you're getting like a massage of your cells. But now we're going to talk about growth hormone, because I have found that there's a lot of people afraid to use growth hormone. I use a natural product called Beyond GHS, which I take, because it actually raises my own growth hormone, but we want everybody to know there's a reason to replace this stuff. And this is the why replace, neuroendocrinology, actions, laboratory, GH activation. This is a really good talk available from Millennium Health Centers. And across the board, this is to get you interested. This is a patient that he did one thing on. He just gave growth hormone. Now, if you'd seen this patient, in our country today, you know what we're doing to everybody at NYU Medical Center? We're sending a rubber band around their stomach. That's what this patient would get. Now, do you think in the long run that that's going to solve a lot of problems, or is it going to give problems? Is it possible that when you so disrupt normal GI function, that that patient's going to have nutritional problems the rest of their life? So what I'm pointing out to you is that you don't have the experience right now to know how to use thyroid. You're not using melatonin. You probably aren't aggressive in iodine. You don't know a lot about who needs adrenal cortex support and who needs testosterone and how you're going to deal with the estrogen, which I've told you, you don't have to use a prescription. You can now get it safely as a supplement, and it's available. It's companies with the name HRT, Herbal Remedy from Thailand, HRT. But look at this guy. He's pretty happy. He's not going to go into some idiot medical center and let him band his stomach now because you've treated a cause. So it's quite interesting to see that metabolic functions of growth hormone increases calcium, so that they approve growth hormone if the patient's osteoporosis is so bad they can't put a screw in the hip. Now they're going to, it's okay. So you need to know that if you know your whole story on growth hormone, a lot of people have played football, and guess what? They got hit in the head. And a lot of those little things, we call them concussions, have set the stage for damage to the pituitary. And only a few doctors, really one that's not related to me, but Mark Gordon is an endocrinologist who specializes in brain trauma and identifying growth hormone deficiency, which we have actual sublingual material available with or without prescription that can help bring things back. And I just use things that are as natural as using the tribulus and a really interesting product called Beyond Growth Hormone Support that just gives natural things to support this function. And you sleep much better when your growth hormone, because that really goes up. When you go to sleep, growth hormone production goes up. But it reduces the liver uptake of glucose, promotes the liver glucogen, so you're not always hungry because you're breaking down that stored fat and putting it back. So the patient neck contributes to the function that across the board you can't hardly go wrong, but like testosterone replacement therapy, hormone therapy, they've been under a lot of attack because obviously things that are so powerful can be abused by somebody who says, everybody needs, just need, you're obese, come to my clinic and I'll give you thyroid. They don't talk to them about exercise, they don't do, and that would be bad medicine. So obviously things that have great potential to influence people to feel better can get abused, and then they can get on a list to make the doctor doing it appear that need to be supervised a little by his medical board. But these are powerful things that the gold standard for testing, the gold standard has been shown to be worthless. IGF-1 is poor. The IGF binding protein 3 is very good, 24-hour urine. So I'm just letting you know that there are ways to identify, and unfortunately, with this current situation, most of that testing will probably not be covered for most people. But it allows you to be protected so that you're practicing first-class medicine. Obviously, in my kind of medicine, I would prefer to give a therapeutic challenge to somebody and let them start on a little thyroid. And if I have a brand new patient, I probably don't need to spend several $1,000s proving that they had this toxin, which blocked that iodine, which led to this thyroid not working. It's nice. The patient just wants to feel well. But you want to practice good medicine. And you don't want to claim to have a single answer, a panacea, which is why I protect you by saying that everything is multifactorial. So I can have a patient that does everything, the infection, the genetics, the heavy metal, the hormone, the toxin, gets the right kind of folic acid, does my zeolite, does everything, but keeps on drinking the milk they've been allergic to since they were a baby, and they make me look really bad. Because they still have arthritis, they can't get out of bed, their MS has still got them in a wheelchair, and I knew how I get everybody out of a wheelchair with MS. It's so like falling off a log. Like prostate cancer, it's one of the easiest things I treat. These are easy, but it's because I've been doing it for a while. But hormones in concert, this is the problem. My friend Dr. Terry Hertog from Belgium, he scared me the first time because he says, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to, there's a book, Safe Uses of Cortisone by Jeffers. You're going to have to do a little support of that. And you're going to have to do a little support of the testosterone. And you may want to even give men a little bit of the estrogen. And I take and use progesterone, and I take my melatonin, and I have my growth hormone support. You begin to think like you're a nutcase. But bottom line, it is a symphony, and there aren't any of my glands. You see, glandular tissues have a unique feature. Take your pituitary out and look at it. It has highest levels of mercury of anything in the body. It has certain things in it. You see, why do I do hair testing as a laboratory? Because the hair is a living tissue but it has a lot of cysteine. That's an SH group. So it concentrates the level of lead and mercury. So I don't have to have a multi-million-dollar machine to measure the level of lead and mercury in your cerebrospinal fluid, which would not have concentrated it. I can get for an affordable, lousy $500,000. I can do about 20, 30, 40 different minerals with an ICP mass spec. And so across the board, it's because things concentrate in certain tissues. So it's because you've got all these toxins in the fat that's part of every gland that we actually proved that just taking the mercury out, measuring good tests with Dr. Frackleton with a good laboratory in Cleveland, Ohio. He's been one of the co-founders of ACAM. He proved that if you simply got the mercury out, a tremendous amount of growth hormone started coming back, working again. And we've had patients who've been on thyroid for years who, with getting the lead out with chelation, didn't need thyroid anymore. So it should become obvious then that I'm trying to take people from non-functioning, as I was, back to full functioning. And you may need for a while to support every single part of their body. So don't be afraid if you have it, because like Terry Hertog says, if you give them just thyroid, but they were also relatively low on the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, and the cortisol, that you almost imbalance the body, and it kind of makes you say, gee, I thought I learned something, you didn't help them a lot. It's fun when you help everybody a lot. And John Lee was one of my mentors, and he was from Stanford, and he really took on the AMA and made them clear to them that they can't seem to see the difference between synthetic progesterone and natural progesterone. He showed that virtually he sees always natural progesterone is virtually being against inflammation, against cancer, and it does work topically, although there are going to be people saying it doesn't work topically. It's working for most people as an affordable, sometimes non-prescription topical product. Midlife suicide rates rises. Well, you know, it was interesting. The early research on cholesterol lowering, they told you there was less heart attacks. And they started selling this quackery to the public. But those of us who actually know how to read literature, looked at their literature and saw an amazing thing. They had less heart attacks, but they had the same or slightly greater death rate. Because people were dying of all the other diseases that you induce when you play with cholesterol, the master building block of every cell membrane in your body. And one of the big things that jumps up the highest was suicide and accidents as cause of death. That ties to the impaired neurotransmitter function that they induce when they play with it. So it's always nice, because most people are so brainwashed, they have no idea how to read a report. And then when Marcia Angel, used to be editor of New England Journal, writes a book and says that nothing New England Journal writes is free of bias. They're all on the take. And she resigns as the chief editor at New England Journal, saying that that stuff is so much on the take that you don't want to read it. It's kind of interesting, but that still is how we run medicine in this country. So when you have all these suicides, it's not strange to me. I've been practicing medicine for a long time and looking at it very critically to see what is the story. And there is a large amount of concern. Doctors use estrogen to treat memory loss. You bet. That's why I'm so strong on puresterol. This is the Pueraria mirifica that we standardized, that we found in the diet in northern Thailand. The lowest incidence of breast cancer in the world, according to World Health Organization. And also the men don't get broken bones and they don't get up at night to urinate. So doctors use estrogen, and I take this safe form of estrogen. But this is just to let you know that estrogen injections protect brain cells. And so there's a lot to learn here. So I'm really upset when people have been so brainwashed that they believe the New York Times just wants to sell a paper. So they make headlines. Oh my God, you're going to have breast cancer and heart disease if you take estrogen. That was not what the study showed at all. It was not. In fact, there was 21% less heart attacks if you were on the estrogen. But they couldn't sell it. There was no way to sell that. They wanted to sell fear. And so the truth is always takes a little time. The declining testosterone, a major thing for aging men. Yes, there's no question in my mind. Every one of my patients is going to be put back, ideally, to something realistic like their estrogen, like their testosterone level would have been at age 20 to 30. So in men, the circulating levels increase at puberty, they peak in adult. Now, you need to do the free testosterone, not the total, because the total testosterone goes up, so you need to know which test. But andropause is a lethal death. It's a lethal disease. It brings on diabetes, brain, heart, frailty. I'm really against that. That's your 90-year-old that can't open the door to get in and out of the store anymore. Bone inflammation. So this is really important. If we look at testosterone, it gets lower every year in people. And 10-year prospective study, these men with high endogenous testosterone have the lowest mortality of cardiovascular, yet they have people frightened and they tell them if you take testosterone you're going to get prostate cancer. Well, if you did, then why don't we get a lot of prostate cancer when we go through puberty? I mean, they absolutely twist things around and have people so afraid to take responsibility. And since most doctors can't know all this, it's very hard to find a doctor that will cover the whole waterfront. Can age-related decline in testosterone be prevented? Well, I've indicated it's sex hormone binding globulin that goes up. That's what ties up the testosterone, so there's no free testosterone, and you can do things when you detox people. I've said that we have proven when we took mercury out that growth hormone levels got restored, and when we took other toxins out like lead, we saw thyroid come back. So there's possibility, but I'm not going to claim that I'm going to live to 120 and do it without taking all these hormones. I will be taking these hormones. Prevalence of androgen deficiency in men with erectile dysfunction. Of course, it's quite common with this erectile dysfunction. It's correlated significantly with age, uncontrolled diabetes. Now, they're always going to throw in cholesterol because they want to sell their lipid disorders. And so it's so amazing that they have remedies, growth hormone, secret of youth, or a cautionary tale. This is where they're trying to tell you, be careful, because even though it was published, Mainstream Medicine by Rudman, of how good growth hormone was, they're very concerned about human growth hormone, and it's now $1 billion global market, and they're going to have a big debate over who can take it and who can't. And Jonathan Wright has done a good job of covering a lot of this with his bioidentical hormone reference map, and he has just decided to come out with a product that does have the pruraria in it, because he knows not everybody wants to go to a doctor and be under a doctor's care to get bioidentical. And so we can do this without seeing prescriptions and still have women not go through change of life using all natural pruraria verifica when you get the standardized type called purestrol. An updated review of environmental estrogen and androgen mimics. Last 40 years, as the hormone-like effects of these chemicals, we are all loaded with these dioxins. That's why girls at age 8 can have advanced sexual development, because we have these mimics in our body which are known to have estrogen-like activity. So that's called estrogen mimics or estrogen disruptors. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. What can you do to fight against these things? The recurrence of breast cancer, 8-year survival, was reduced when you gave some tamoxifen. Tamoxifen is synthetic estrogen, but I can do all that with Puraria mirifica, and I don't need the soy at all, because we're about 1,000 times stronger than genistin with the normal product that we talked about. So selective estrogen receptor modulator, please learn this word, SERM. But I'm only interested in SERM when it's to the beta receptor, because that's the one you need. There is in everybody alpha receptors and beta. So when I take my purestrol, known as HRT, which I get from northern Thailand in a standardized form, you can see with the beta that it's treating my colon, it's treating my prostate so that I get up less at night and I have a much easier stream, and it's treating my bone, and it's treating my sex life, and it's treating the woman's uterus and her ovaries, and it's amazing because we have put it now into a vaginal personal lubricant product, which is making women at age 75 sexually active who've been unable to even wear slacks for 20 years because the vagina area has been so dry and uncomfortable. We've restored this with all natural product, a gourd growing in the ground that I cover in a great length on my website in a whole discussion about Puraria mirifica. So now the question comes up, if you're going to go to the doctor and they're going to give you bioidentical, I'm in favor of it. Just not everybody can afford it. So I have nothing against what they're doing. Obviously, if I can get it from plant-based, I feel a little more comfortable, and certainly it's more affordable. But I just want to back Jonathan Wright, my friend, and what he's doing when he's talking about the fact that progesterone is a major productor, and we also want women to know DHEA is a good guy. You need it. 25 milligrams a day, it's cheap. Men need 50 milligrams. You need melatonin. Take it. And women are going to need, some women are going to need some topical testosterone in their wrists, or they're not going to have a sex life. You have to get these things. So xenoestrogens, biotransformation, and again, all of this is being taught by IFM, and we're trying to understand how estrogens induce breast cancer. And so the big thing that I'm teaching you at this point is that when I give somebody a treatment who's got hot flashes, you need to understand that I'm dealing with a person who has a very sick liver. So you need to understand that if you talk to the top researchers on this, when you put the woman's estrogen as a string in the vagina, so it bypasses, just like anything I put in the rectum, is going to bypass the liver, you're going to get a different effect than when I go here, because here it's going to get broken down by a sick liver first. So there's a reason for us to now have the new product that I'm discussing, which is making elderly women feel sexually active again, is the natural product from northern Thailand called purestrol, put in the vagina where it bypasses liver destruction. Breast cancer in relation to hormone replacement therapy, estrogens have been a carcinogen as far as everybody's concerned, but I'm telling you that we have natural alternatives that are cutting down. In fact, we have studied all the main breast cancer cell lines, and we stopped the proliferation of those cancer cells using HRT, otherwise known as purestrol. So it's pretty important to know that there was a plant, a gourd, that looks to the body almost like tamoxifen, which is synthetic. But this is all natural. But it's very close to being estriol in the body, and it's stopping in half the women hot flashes. It'll stop it in all the women if I give it to them orally and in the vagina, so I get past their sick liver until they go through a couple of years of detoxification, because detoxification is a lifetime program. This is not a weekend program. There are no reasons for needing permanent balanced parenteral HRT. So this is going back into the fact that some women are not going to get the fact orally. This is selecting the right hormone test. So this is where things can get expensive, because we have a big fight. Is saliva going to help, or is serum going to help, or do I need 24-hour urine? We have proponents of each, and there are pluses and minuses to all. But in any event, we can reserve getting that deep into it for most people, as long as I can get you on a safe program that covers my FIGHT that I don't usually have to get into, where I can easily spend a lot of money. We have a book called Experimental Man by David Ewan Duncan. He was the guy that we used as the poster boy for proving how toxic the average man is. He's a professor at University of California, San Francisco, in perfect health. We tested him and put it in the National Geographic. And he was loaded with things like flame retardant, polybrominated diphenyl ethers, because he flies a lot and he's on airplanes. And the seat covers are loaded because they don't want the plane to explode. So he has stuff that knocks down fertility, does a lot of bad stuff. So that got him interested. So he wrote a book called Experimental Man, and he's done another $500,000 worth of tests on his body. That $500,000 test isn't interesting to the average man, but he's proven that in the best medical system in the country, at UCSF, he goes and sees his internist before he does the test. He's told, for a 50-year-old, you're in perfect health, you're going to live forever. And he finds that he has rare conditions that can let him die at any time. So that's the problem with looking too far. You're going to make every doctor look bad. So you need to know that there's perception versus data. And so we're not going to go into this thing, but we have the perception that HRT gives you heart disease. The evidence is it does not. And I'm going to just go rapidly, because you've got these. We have for breast, we've been told it's going to cause increased breast cancer. I've told you that the one I recommend, purestrol, has the lowest incidence, and that we actually believe that it helps treat it. But there's a wide variation across the world, so there's a lot of stuff. So then we have the perception on bone. Should not be used for bone because of its unfavorable effect. Well, that's nonsense. If you realize, I can't be an anti-aging doctor unless I can keep you at age 90 or 100 able to do that same tennis or golf that you always did. And the minute you stop being able to do that golf, you're on a rapid downhill course. So you need to understand that's why I've gotten into all this kind of medicine, because I can make all those functions restore in you, and then you remain fully active. So you need to understand that bone, to me, It's always been my passion to tell you that if you kept the bones strong, you wouldn't have the hard arteries. Because that 140 times calcium buildup on your artery came from the bones you were losing. So you need to do all my tricks in order to beat this. Beneficial effects of maca. That's part of my power drink. Teaspoon every time. It normalizes LH, FSH in women. It increases copulative activity of all rodents by a factor of 4. So it's okay. Sex is really good to extend your lifespan. And it does raise the free testosterone level in your body, as well as the other products like the tribulus that I use of a certain standardized form that I use in my Beyond GHS. So I love understanding all this stuff. Estrogen receptor beta. This is what it's going to get a little technical, and we're not going to spend too much time on this today, but I have to reverse the hormone dysregulation that's going on, because once you're mercury poisoned, you have dysregulated your normal hormone function. And I can't get all the mercury out of you much faster than I get the lead out. But I can neutralize it from the first day. But then I keep you on it so that I get those benefits better and better. So if we take and realize vitamin D deficiency, the forgotten hormone, vitamin D pandemic, vitamin D deficiency, 10 tips to reduce breast cancer. Don't wear underwire bras. Avoid breast implants. The latest research has now gone back. Now they're showing a rare blood cancer is definitely tied to the silicone breast implants after they tried to swear there was nothing to it. It is bad news. And if you could, you'd take them out. But some women will be stuck because it would be too deforming to take it out. But meditate. Cleanse your liver. Brush your skin. Eat organic soy. You don't have to if you're getting my HRT, but something that will work as a natural selective estrogen receptor modulator of the beta receptor. We go way beyond soy, and because soy in our country has been so much GMO, I tend to not use it for anything unless it's fermented and I'm in Japan. I feel kind of safe because I don't like GMO, and they know a lot about how to do tempeh and other things, miso. I love it when I'm in Japan. Sleep in pitch black. Don't be in a bright room because you need that melatonin. Get broccoli every week for sure. Alcohol is still a major problem. You've got to exercise. These are things you have to do. So childhood soy intake has some clear-cut benefits, even though we wish it was safer. And as I repeat, the food in northern Thailand that is this Pararia murifica is a part of their diet. So I'm not afraid to have you take HRT at any age in anybody. How to reduce your breast rank by 60%. My friend Dr. Robert Rowan is very, very much aware of the genistin and the isoflavones, and he's interested in how they can work as a weak, and they can bind to the hormone receptor, and they can avoid the xenoestrogen, the dioxin and PCBs from having the effect on your cell. That's what I'm trying to do, but I have something that's far stronger with the HRT we've mentioned. Soy consumption and breast cancer, again, the data looks really positive, but my FIGHT program takes you to the next level, or Mark Hyman's program, either one. Efficacy program of Pararia, this is the one we've been talking about. Now you know how to spell it. It's called PM. There's all kinds of knockoffs. Since it's taken us 10 years to standardize it, I work with MD PhDs. I meet with the Thailand Research Council. I have 10 years of effort into this. This is a huge effort. I will only tell you that it is life-changing. And it means that nobody in my country has to worry about weak bones. They don't have to worry about the Alzheimer's, because this ties to the estrogen receptor in your brain. This is a big story. So I hope that you take your time to listen to a whole... I've done a great interview telling you where it came from. Is it just for menopause? No. It's the herb of the decade. And you can read all about it. This is what it looks like. This is amazing. It's just a gourd-like material that grows only in certain soil in northern Thailand, which is why we've spent a lot of time on the agricultural development. So before we build a worldwide market that everybody wants it, we wanted to be sure. But this goes back in the first records to 700 years ago on these palm leaf thing. The Buddhist monks thought it was magic because of what it was doing. And so this is the northern Thailand, and this is the people in northern Thailand who have lived on this amazing, amazing food. And this is from the Department of Medical Sciences, Public Health in Thailand, stating that it has always been accepted by them as a useful therapy for menopause in their country. And Christiane Northrup's new book, she's a dear friend of mine, has endorsed it as being to be very effective at stopping menopause, vaginal dryness, hot flashes, insomnia, irritability, and she knows that there's only the one standardized form that has the safe effects on the bone in the vagina while protecting the breasts and the endometrium, and it goes on and on. And so Pereira actually makes the breasts healthier with fibroblasts, but it prevents estrogen-dependent breast cancer cells. So preliminary study of Pereira, there's a lot of studies, you can read them in time. The effects prove that it does not disturb any of your other hormone function. So we're going to take a break now.